Else
realm
diners. Hello, I'm Mark,
And I'm Ruth.
and welcome to the Else Realm Diner. It came from the swirling depths of the multiverse, a sentient cafe, a cosmic mystery, transporting its clientele through all manner of realms. No one knows precisely where the diner came from. All we know is that it seeks interesting conversation, warm memories, and good banter.
On the menu today is Prey.
Pray! Hallelujah! Is
Woohoo!
this the Predator movie that we've been praying for, Ruth?
Yes! Bitch. So
But,
let's just take a moment to enjoy the puns.
Yep, good
That was
puns.
very punny.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been storing that one up since
For the title.
since I heard about this movie, to be honest. There's also something else to say on that word, but I'll come back to that at some other point in this episode. Do we want to talk about what we've been watching, or is this basically what
We
we've
are
been
talking
watching?
about what we've been watching. We've
Exactly.
been watching Prey.
Exactly, yeah. We are.
This is unusual for us, but we are straight into the topic at hand.
We are, not least because we are running a week or so, well, 2 weeks or so, late on our schedule. And we figured, you know what? We can do Stephen King at the beginning of next month. And right now, we need to talk about this movie. We need to talk about Prey, released on Disney Plus in the UK, Hulu streaming in the US, and other platforms elsewhere, presumably. It hasn't had a cinema release, and it kind of came out of the blue. I know an awful lot of Predator fans who didn't know that this film was coming until they released some promo posters of a Native American woman crouched with a bow and arrow in the mist, hunting in the forest with a shadow behind her and 3 red dots emanating from the mist. And
Ooh, I don't think I've even seen that.
it's a great image. I don't think it even had the name of the film on it at that point. And
Ooh, that's a real teaser, isn't it?
yeah, and it really piqued my interest. But nonetheless, we are here to talk about Prey, and we will get to Prey. But I suppose what films are we going to talk about today in the context of Predator and the Predator series?
Okay, are you asking me? Okay.
Yeah.
So Predator.
Yeah.
Predator 2.
Uh-huh.
Predators.
Yeah. Okay.
The one that I can't remember what the other one was called. The other sequel.
The Predator.
The Predator. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Prey.
Yeah.
And potentially AVP and AVP 2.
So you do think that they count then?
So yeah, randomly, I do think they count as Predator movies, but not as Alien movies.
Oh, that's intriguing.
Because sense is and rationale is my middle name. That's entirely based on, I don't know, emotion. Literally, it's very challengeable. I have no reasonable reason for that. That is just how I feel about the situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, since the film's release at the beginning of this month, I've watched Prey 3 times, and I've watched the original Predator 2.5 times. So in the past 2 weeks, I've been watching a lot of this stuff. And I suppose the initial question, really, as far as Predator movies goes, is can you remember the first time you saw Predator? 1987.
Do you know, I can't, but I definitely lumped it in with Alien, Terminator, and Predator are like a trio of movies that I kind of came across at the same time. And I think probably of the 3, the Predator is the one that left me the most cold as a child.
Okay.
It was the one that I had the least interest in as a child. Now, I don't necessarily feel like that now. I think they're all kind of on a par in terms of my love for them. But I think I found I suppose I think probably the fact that the Predator is like a lot more macho
Hmm.
um, than the other movies, probably a little bit more difficult to get on board with when I was younger.
Okay, okay, I can understand that. I think, I mean, obviously, 1984 was the year I was born. It was also the year Terminator came out. 86, you've got Aliens. 87, you've got Predator. I mean, this is the mid to late 80s, very early 90s was just an astonishing time for cinema. And sometimes I find myself wondering, and when I say cinema, I mean that kind of popcorn fun film. I don't mean art house film, but that kind of
But yeah, but there was a trend in the 80s, wasn't there, for these kind of super violent sci-fi like RoboCop.
yeah.
Um, a lot of the stuff in the 80s was very OTT, very gore heavy,
Mm, mm.
um,
Well,
and kind of very sexualized as well. I think in some, I don't think this is an example of that, but I think for the 80s, I think there's quite a lot of sexualization in movies and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. In Commando, you have random boobs. like, I think
Yeah,
someone's literally filming a porno. I think in one of the rooms in the motel where they have a fight, and he gets chucked through the door, and there's this boobs. So yeah, it was that kind of time, and sometimes I wonder whether or not Hollywood will ever be that gung ho ever again.
I don't think it can be because I think when you look at those movies, they were quite risky in some ways for Hollywood.
Hmm.
And I think there's a tendency for Hollywood now not to make 18 certificate movies
Mm.
because they limit the
God,
audience.
Conan. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Well, you're just listing Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
I am. I am.
So
I am. But
so Mark, what's your point?
no, no, no. So my point is that actually Predator was a different beast because even by 87, relatively early in Arnie's career, he's established this on-screen presence, and actually he looks
Yeah,
great in this film. His
yeah,
jawline
he
is
really
fantastic. His
does.
teeth are fantastic. Everything about him is just. He's probably the best. It may even be the best he's ever looked in a film. Actually, in Predator, possibly.
Mm.
And
To be honest, that's not something I've ever considered before.
no, no,
Just
but the thing is, I think it's important because he looks confident. He looks like
yes,
he could take on anything. And my understanding is in that film, he went into the role only on the condition that he could invite people to be in the cast around him who he could bounce off and sort of have camaraderie with because he knew them from the bodybuilding and weight training circuit, but also people who of not only the same size but similar attitudes to him
mm-hmm.
that would work as a team, so that you really get to know this team. And the thing I love about this film is the way it completely flips the script when the Predator arrives. The fact that you have this opening where they're all on the helicopter, you've got the rock and roll music playing, they're all
Yeah.
confident, they're not overconfident, they just know that they can handle pretty much anything because they're a unit. And
Yeah,
you were saying that you get these character moments, don't you, sort of dropped in the helicopter that.
yeah, but I also liken that scene very much to the scene in Aliens
Hmm.
where the Marines are going in and there's this kind of confident camaraderie. I mean, there's a little bit of
We got
arrogance.
knives, we got nukes, we got yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, but it's because they are elite,
Yeah.
and within that eliteness, there's a confidence, there's a team building. They can handle anything, and I think those two scenes both do that. We get to see kind of the character building in and amongst the kind of team element of it.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
think there's parallels that can be made there, which again is why I drump these movies together. But anyway, carry on.
No, no, well, I completely agree, and it even goes down the route of having some of the slightly naff catchphrase stuff. So the fact that
Yeah,
almost out of nowhere you've got him going stick around, having to knife this guy to a wall in the camp, that they come across,
Oh
and
yeah.
you're thinking, yeah, this is an Arnie movie. He's going to be saying, I'll be back and all that kind of thing, which I don't think he says in this film.
But he does say, "Get to the
Get
chopper."
to the job, and suddenly we see these men being not only hunted without them knowing initially, but slowly but surely being picked off and being scared. The fact that Billy, the tracker of the group, who is just
Well, is he Native American?
he is, yeah, yeah, he's played by Sonny Landham.
So I wondered when I because I watched it recently as well because I was like, oh, I love Predator. I should
Well,
go
we
watch
watched
it
it
after I'd
together.
watched Prey. Well, we watched half of it together, and then I
Yeah.
went home and watched the whole thing again. So I've watched it 1.5 times.
Okay.
But I was looking at him and thinking, like, is this the link to Prey? Because he seems to, I mean, it's never said, but there's this kind of understated look of like he knows maybe legends, he's dealing with something that's I thought there might be a bit of a link to his heritage that then they've pulled that string through into Prey.
Potentially, and if they've done that, they've done it in a very delicate way because in the first film, there's enough sort of subtext that you could think that he's drawing on Native American stories of the Chupacabra or the Wendigo, that kind of thing. These sorts of creatures that stalk humans and drink their blood and this. But also he comes across as a slightly spiritual, slightly more sort of stoic, slightly more connected to the environment person because he can literally read the jungle like it's a book. Also, as well, he's probably my favorite character, maybe my favorite actor in the film.
Really?
Not least because he's really acting. Like behind the scenes, he had I believe he had quite a temper, potentially a little bit of an affinity for alcohol, and he needed a constant minder so that he wouldn't get into fights with other people. It wasn't to to stop
Yeah,
him.
you were telling me about this, and I was just thinking that guy from that film,
Yeah,
that
and yet
was like
when he's on
chill.
exactly when he's on screen, he's rock solid, and I really appreciate that about his performance. But the fact that he says, I think to the character Poncho, he's like, I'm scared, and he goes, "No way, man, you ain't afraid of no man." He goes, I don't think it's a man out there. Like, is
Yeah.
it's so good, and it's that element of surprise, and also actually the thing that really sticks with me because I think I saw this film possibly before I saw the Aliens films actually,
I'm
is
just shaking my head at you, like priorities.
well I can't control when VHSs came into my life as a kid, but anyway,
Yes, you can go back in time and make it right.
just break the laws of physics and
Yeah,
do it.
absolutely.
Anyway, so it's that shot of having heard the sort of the anytime, that kind of
Yeah,
thing, and then in comes there's this heat vision that's going down to the jungle to where these men have just been. It's approaching this scorpion that Mac has just stabbed and saved.
I
Dylan.
think Mac is my favorite character in it.
Yeah, he's a good character. Again, his little character piece is just he's constantly shaving, isn't he? Dry shaving
Yeah,
with the
but I
sweat.
also, do you know, the other thing I liked about him is I think he's like visually interesting. I hope this doesn't come across in a bad way, but like I find him visually interesting to look at because his skin is so dark, and you don't see that color skin really on people in movies very
No.
regularly. There's a tendency to kind of have paler black people,
Then
and I
also
just find
it completely frames his eyes, doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
and there's a bit where he just almost disappears in the forest, and I was just like, I just find him fascinating to watch, and
Yeah.
I like the fact that it's almost like the first time he's been scared.
Yeah.
You get that impression, but also I like the fact that he is so vengeful about the death of his friend.
Yeah. He's so loyal to Blaine, played by
Yeah,
Jesse Ventura, the wrestler. But anyway, but it's that shot where we've got this point of view of this thing with this, kind of all these sound effects going
Yeah.
on, and it's playing back speech, almost like it's trying to understand what these things are saying to each other, these humans, and then in comes the hand.
Yeah.
This hand with with long fingernails and clearly some sort of gauntlet on. It picks up the scorpion, is examining it like it's a specimen. That shot just stuck with me. It absolutely haunted me as a kid. I was like, what does this mean? What does this mean? And even though I went on obviously to watch the rest of the film, for some reason the impact of that shot is mainly what I took away as a kid. Was just
But
this.
that's the first time you see anything of this mysterious creature.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I have to tell you an experience that I had, which is slightly but off topic, but I feel like it's relevant.
Was this you being
So
hunted by an invisible creature in Nottingham as a kid?
it's not that far off from your
Oh, okay.
suggestion.
Okay.
You may laugh. So my brother lives in Malaysia.
Uh-huh.
So I went to Malaysia and we went to this orangutan sanctuary. It's where they were like half wild. So they would sometimes come for food and sometimes they would just fend for themselves. But there was this protected area and there was food for them every day if they needed it to kind of supplement their diet. And so we'd gone into this place in the jungle, and it's hot and it's sweaty and it's jungly, and you can just see the trees moving. You could hear them rustling, and you could see them sort of waving backwards and forwards because there was something in the trees that was coming towards you. And I remember thinking vividly, like, oh my God, this is what it would have felt like to have a predator coming towards you. And they were just orangutans.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that being. Yeah, I mean, probably the closest. I think I mentioned this in the Blair Witch episode, but closest I've ever come to that is probably being in an area of the woods that was dead, basically where no light was getting through because the canopy's so thick. The eerie silence was for me very reminiscent of Blair Witch, but also actually it's that sort of similar sense of presence and not being able to see anything that must be horrifying. And also, I love the reason why I love Billy as a character is that he is our way in terms of logic as well. He talks about how, okay, so the rebels came in and they left, and they were followed by 6 people in US issued army boots, and they followed them, and you're like, okay, cool. So we're getting a story here, and then suddenly he's talking about how they're shooting everywhere. There's spent rounds everywhere, but there's nothing being hit.
But yeah, I mean, I loved the way they drip fed like the information, and like when they come across like the skinned people, and you've got that same like that trope of somebody's lied I can't remember what his name is, the other guy, Dylan. Yeah, so he's lied, he knows more than he's saying. And but I love the way they sort of drip feed. They're like, why were they doing this? Why were they firing in all directions? There's nothing here. There's no tracks. There's nothing.
Yeah,
and also then you come across.
Well, and also it's such a small community of well-trained people that they know these men.
Yes.
So Dutch Arnie is like, I knew these men. They were out of Fort Benning. Fort Benning or whatever, Green Beret. These aren't people who get scared.
But yeah, and crucially, they were another elite team that got sent in, weren't they? And that wouldn't have been the behavior of an elite team. That's like the behavior of like a bunch of novices stuck in the jungle, scared out of their minds.
Yeah.
And in that sense, and then I think it's quite telling and foreshadowing as well, because that is then later what their team does.
Yeah. Well, actually, no, not quite, because they do learn. They kind of learn from the mistakes of their brethren, in so much as they start to lay out traps that maybe the predator can't see. But I suppose initially they do go with their training. They put tripwires and stuff, and it doesn't fall for it, but then they start to use vines and stuff.
And then also there's moments of levity and comedy, aren't there? Because there's like that moment where Mac kills that pig. Yeah. And everybody's just like, you did it, man.
Indeed, you couldn't have found a bigger pig. And he's like, fuck off. So yeah, there is levity, but again, it's a tight bond, it's a tight knit group. They all know each other, and when they start confessing to each other just how scared they are,
Mm.
then again it brings you in. But actually, there's another point about, and I'm glad you brought up the Green Beret guys having been skinned alive, because in that sense, it's a descent, it's a slow descent into madness, isn't it? Because you start off with what could have been the rebels having caught and skinned these elite special force types, and then they're thinking,
Yeah, and there's kind of a horror in that,
yeah,
why would you do this? What's
yeah,
the
why
purpose
did
of
these men do
this?
this? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you got Jesse Ventura going, also Blaine going, right, payback time. Gets out his massive Uzi, not Uzi, minigun.
Mm.
Um, uh,
Which is an ironic name.
it is an ironic name.
Sorry, I just thought I'd add that in there.
Yeah, guess that's his maxi gun, um,
Yeah.
his maxi dress. No, but anyways, but the point is, it's that subversion of expertise, of camaraderie, of brotherhood, of because the thing is, well, I think they also illustrate quite well not only military prowess, but also the ability to survive in that environment. So actually, just before Billy discovers the bodies hanging from the trees, he decides, okay, I fancy having a drink now. So he chops a vine. He's drinking from water from this vine, which is what people do. They know where to get water in the jungle if
Yeah.
they've been
And
trained. They know how
actually
to feed themselves.
there's a couple of instances of that where you see this kind of familiarity with the terrain
Yeah.
of these people, which includes the example of the like tracking, their surveilling of the thing, their knowledge of how to disappear.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's quite yeah, it's quite interesting.
And also communication almost without having
Yeah.
to talk to each other.
Oh no, you're right, on it, because they've got all those hand signals.
And they just know how each other works. So when this thing starts picking them apart, the impact is big, and it's impressive. And then also, it's almost as though I often feel as though Predator has this whole almost fourth act. Actually, I often feel as though when Dutch jumps off into the lagoon and swims across, and he's been shot in the back, and he's like, ah, and he covers himself in mud, and he's just hiding in the roots. That almost feels like that's a whole extra bit of the film. It's not even a third act. It feels like a whole separate little chunk, because you've had this such a dramatic winding story of people being picked off, that then you get this final almost like a mini story in itself of Arnie actually, or Dutch actually figuring out how he might
Well,
be
that's
able to.
interesting. Yeah, because I mean, I hadn't thought of it like that. I just considered that to be, this story beat called The Dark Night of the Soul. He's got to this point where he is vulnerable. His training hasn't worked. He thinks he's going to die. He nearly died. He's lucky to be alive. He's covered in mud. He's kind of praying because he really thinks he's going to be next. And fortune is on his side. And that is so I just thought of that, not, and then you're right, the last sequence does almost have a 3-part act, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like, yeah, a low
Because he
point with
gets,
observation,
yeah.
preparation, and then execution.
And well, it's also failure as well, have you not noticed? Because he sets up all these traps and some of them don't work,
Yeah, yeah.
and so you have these mini
Do it, kill
yeah, so
me. Yeah,
but you have these rises and falls of dramatic tension,
yeah.
and that is kind of yeah, like a mini story in and of itself, which is yeah.
Well, and I think the reason why it's so punctuated in my mind is because of that fall. When he plummets into the lagoon, it's almost like he's found a new depth of hell. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't even know this existed. Like, and then from there out comes the struggle. But then also out comes, I think, arguably something which the other Predator films would struggle to deal with, and that is, what do you do with this creature that's so technologically advanced and who, let's face it, in the first film seems to be a bit petty, because he's been beaten and he goes, right, I'm going to explode myself. And presumably
Yeah.
he's doing. I always thought in canon he's doing this in order to not leave technology behind or whatever. For
So
people on the planet
I
to
don't
discover.
know. I mean, I find that a really challenging ending in the sense that he's not actually beaten, is
Yeah.
he?
No.
And I wondered if that was like part of their lore, LORE, in terms of like that's the honor code. Like the samurai.
Oh, I see. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And what's it called? Harry
Seppuku.
Seppuku.
Seppuku. Yeah. Ritual suicide. Yeah.
Why did I think that was called something like Harry Carry?
I think that's another. That's another way people refer to it. Yeah.
Okay. But yes, I wondered if it was something along that lines, like a I have failed. This has brought shame.
Yeah. And therefore, I will end myself. Potentially. I mean, it's interesting. Some people have suggested that the first Predator movie represents an experienced predator who's coming to the end of his or its career, or maybe even its life, and it's decided to go and just hunt until it can't hunt anymore on Earth because humans are fun to kill.
Well, so I don't know about that, because in canon, when I mean I know we were going to talk about Prey later, but if you look at the Prey, the Predator from Prey, he just keeps hunting.
He does, but can we come back to that? We'll come back to that if
Yes.
that's okay. But
Yeah.
I think there's a big difference with that. In this one, I feel as though I think they all keep hunting. They all go on safaris. But one of the theories that I've heard people talk about is that this is an older predator, and maybe is it like one last final hunt amongst humans? Possibly, I don't know.
Mm,
But there's that whole sort of like he mimics Billy's laugh, doesn't he?
yeah.
And then the bomb goes off, and it sets up this problem. These are technologically advanced creatures. These are
But
mysterious
also,
creatures. Yeah,
let's just examine that on a second. But the introduction, the very first scene is a pod landing.
yeah.
Where's the pod?
Well, exactly. Yeah, good question. Unless again, it was destroyed because the thing is, the second film would manage this by introducing a blue liquid that the predators have, that they can pour onto stuff to make things that they want to disappear. They took this to an extreme
Oh, okay, yes.
in Alien versus Predator Requiem, I think, with the swimming pool, and melting all of the remains in that pool with some blue liquid. And it also turns up in its spray form in Prey, and it's hinted at in Predator as well, isn't it? When he's cleaning the skulls.
Yes.
So they had to sort of create this ability for the creature to hide itself, and presumably that implies potentially that there is this element of we're going to hunt, but we can't allow ourselves to be discovered. Maybe it's an honor thing. Maybe it's a sort of like a Star Trek first directive thing or prime directive thing. We can't allow humans to get hold of our technology. But
Or
Predator,
maybe it's just to do with the fact that they don't want humans to be aware because it would make them more challenging.
possibly, yeah, it might make the hunt. It might subvert some weird element of the honor of the hunt in that sense. The
Hmm.
prey being aware of the predator.
I mean, that would turn it more into a war, surely.
Yeah,
Because I think technologically, I don't think that the technology that the aliens have is so advanced in terms of being able to counteract human technology that they would necessarily
necessarily win.
win. Yeah.
Well, unless they used all a fleet of their spaceships and etc.
Well, yeah.
But anyway, it had this problem, and they had to have this element of a self hiding species, not only in terms of its camouflage, but also in terms of how it dealt with its technology. But also there was this question of why does it keep coming back? And between 1989 and 1990, following the success of the 1987 film, Dark Horse Comics actually published a 4-issue story that was supposed to be the Predator in a city in, I think, New York, facing off against Alan Dutch Schaefer, so Arnold Schwarzenegger's character from the first film.
Oh, interesting.
But they ended up actually changing it to a character called John Schaefer, who was a policeman and who was
Is that because they
investigating
didn't get the rights for his likeness?
something like that, I think so. And also as well, by that point, I think Arnie wasn't interested in returning for sequels. I think he was going into preparations for
Comedy.
comedy. Well, Terminator 2 actually. He was preparing for
Okay.
that role. And there you can see a couple of potential reasons. One of them is that they're intrigued, or they become intrigued by this brother of this man who beat a predator in the jungles of, was it Guatemala or whatever,
Hmm.
in the first film. And two, you see the seeds of what would become Predator 2. This idea that they come back because they're also drawn to heat and conflict and war. And so they sort of played on the story was called Predator Concrete Jungle. And at the beginning of Predator 2, you very deliberately have this rolling shot on the edges of Los Angeles, showing the trees and the swooping sort of foliage of a sort of forest on the outskirts of the city that then becomes the urban jungle of LA.
Hmm.
With gang warfare and violence, and almost as though they're drawn to the heat of the blood being warmed in the summer, and people becoming violent and becoming impatient with each other. The poster for Predator 2, um, actually, I think it was quite clever. It said "Silent, Invisible, Invincible: The Ultimate Hunter." This time, L.A. 1997. But the tagline was Predator 2. He's in town with a few days to kill. So actually, um, the first Predator
Yeah.
movie, first Predator movie set up these questions. Predator 2 had to try and answer them, and I think for a long time, I think that movie got really bad press, didn't it? People didn't like it. I remember when I was a teenager,
Yeah.
people said it's rubbish. It's not as good as the first one. But at that point, there were only two Predator films, so
Yes.
you know it wasn't going to be as good as the first one. But it
So,
introduced so much.
yeah, I mean, but do you think it's a bad film?
No, I think it's a good film. I think it's a.
Same.
I don't
I
think. I
just
don't
wanted
think it's
to,
a great film, but
yeah,
it's a good film. Yeah,
yeah. It's a solid film.
yeah. And it really adds to the it really adds to the lore. It actually does a lot of expanding of first of all the idea that actually the government is onto them and does have a sense of these creatures because
Well, actually, you got a sense of that in the first one, didn't you? Well,
you got a sense
maybe.
you got a sense of the fact that people had legends of them, the demon that
Yes.
hunt that makes trophies of men. I think she says,
Yeah.
doesn't she, in the first film?
But I got the sense that they were being sent in there by, can't remember his name,
Dylan,
Dylan. Thank you. I'm not good with names, not
that's
good with
fine,
character names.
fine.
That's why you're here. You're my
Yeah,
aide memoir.
yeah.
But I got the sense that he was sending them in because they knew something.
No, no, no,
Well,
not
how?
no, because Dylan was sending them in because there was going to be a meeting between Russian and Colombian, was it? It might have been Colombian. Or, anyway, between two different factions, and the CIA wanted in on
Okay.
what was going on. He
Okay.
told Dutch's team that there was a minister, no, sorry, a member
Oh yeah.
of the Senate, I think, who had been kidnapped, but actually it
Yeah.
was a CIA operative who had been downed in a helicopter. So Dylan had no clue. And I think that's also why Dylan actually ultimately sacrifices himself. He says, let me do
Yeah.
this, doesn't he?
No, I think you're right. I think I filled in gaps there
Hmm.
where I was just like secrets, government.
No, but well, as Arnie says, so you cooked up a story and dropped us all in a meat grinder. Dylan used to
Yeah.
be someone I could trust. But in the second film, you got this idea. So Gary Busey, sorry, playing Peter Keyes is just fucking excellent as this arrogant government type who's trying to hunt
Yeah.
these aliens. And you've also got the fact that actually the Predator slides in there in between not only different gangs but also different strata of authority in the city. So you've got
Hmm.
beat cops, you've got their bosses, lieutenants, etc., or captains, And then
Yeah.
above then you've got local and national government. And the predator is just making its way through. And in this film, I like the idea that this is actually a young predator, not an older one as maybe is in the first one, because
Hmm.
he's having to use more tech, like the net that scrunches people against the wall, or the extendable spears, or the throwing disc.
Yeah.
He also gets caught by the government, but also chased down on foot by a middle-aged, well, an approaching middle-aged beat cop in the form of Danny Glover. And then he even lets that guy find their ship hiding in the sewers of LA. Like,
Yeah. There's a string of mistakes, isn't there?
yeah, he smashes up someone's bathroom to heal himself. Like, you know, so I like that actually what we're getting here is that the predator doesn't just use technology as an unfair advantage, but also it actually uses it as a buffer for its own inexperience. And I prefer to think, again, I haven't looked massively at, there's lots of, I've read a couple of the novels. Ironically, actually enough, there's a novel called Aliens versus Predator Prey that I've read, which is actually the story that AVP, the first film, is based on.
I think I've read that, many years ago. I
Yeah.
think I've read that.
So I've read a couple of those. I don't like to go too much into the expanded book, because I think there's an awful lot of room here for headcanon, isn't there? But I
Yeah.
like the idea that the better they become, the less of a technological buffer they need
Yeah.
in order to actually
which
go on a
which
hunt.
is interesting, isn't it? Because that's exactly the opposite of what Arnie did in the movie.
Yeah.
He starts off with the technology and he goes old school in order to win, because they've almost anticipated that that's not what you'll do.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So
Well, actually, yeah, that's interesting. Actually, yeah, because, and I suppose even though they're on the same technological trajectory in their experience, what they're
mhm,
hoping is that they are getting so their prowess is so great. Again, in my reading of it, that the guy in the first one doesn't have the net, doesn't have the discs, doesn't have the extendable spear, because it's going up against well trained, technologically advanced humans, and it's going
mhm.
to just do it with its invisibility and cunning, basically. Yeah, I quite like that idea. But then again, it's also just cool. I mean, like the director, Stephen Hopkins, of the second film, he said that he kind of regrets some elements of what he did in the film, in so much as he was just young and he was thinking, oh, it just needs to be bigger, better, bloodier, more, more loud. And therefore that's why things like the technology comes into it in such a big way. But I think what the gift that he gave with his bigger is better mentality was hints, even further hints at a culture that these creatures have, especially in the final scene when there's this whole rack of skulls, and we see that hint of there's the xenomorph skull, there's all these other
Mhm.
creatures that we're like, what the hell is that thing? What the hell is that? A trophy cabinet, and then also a whole group, a whole clan of predators on the ship.
Which again, I think adds almost, doesn't it, to the idea that it's a predator in training. He's not gone out alone. He's got a
Hmm.
team. Um, you know, they're waiting for him to come back,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah, and crucially, when this again, in my humble opinion, this newbie to the hunt, or relative newbie to the hunt, is killed by a human, they don't kill him. They could have they could have very easily killed him at the end of that film. No one would have known where the hell he went. But instead, they chuck a pistol in his direction.
Well, they honor him, don't they?
Exactly, yeah, they honour him with a pistol engraved Raphael Adolini, 1715.
Which
Now,
has meaning for later on.
it has actually it has two meanings. We'll come back to that in just a second. But before we sort of move on from Predator 2, is there anything else that you want to say about it, or that strikes you from that film? I mean, obviously, there's the fantastic performance by, oh, what's his name?
Bill Pullman.
Bill Paxton. Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton, yes, that's
Yeah.
right. No, I
Everything's
mean,
his speciality.
yeah. No, I
Observation's my
thought he was,
speciality. Go on, sorry.
yeah, I really liked him in it. My actual big, if I can complain about it for a moment,
Hmm.
my issue is actually with Danny Glover,
Okay.
not the actor, the character.
Uh huh.
I just, I don't like the fact. Basically, I don't think people that behave like that should be policemen.
Oh, I see. So people who get violent with, so like the way he sort of he collars Gary Busey in the police station, and he's like, back off, motherfucker, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Oh,
I genuinely think he is the epitome of people that shouldn't have any power.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Because he makes decisions about um, he makes moral decisions on the fly. He is violent. He breaks rules. And actually, what I want from an authority person in the police is them to be absolutely following the letter of the law. And
That said though, his rash behaviour at the beginning does save a life. When he just decides to go in there, put bulletproof vests on a car, drive into a gun battle, and help this guy who's been shot.
yeah, but in real life, that kind of behavior, like, and the fact that they're like, well, you've got a good arrest record.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, of course that guy's got a good arrest record. He's probably like faking it, arresting whoever and being like, yeah, 100% guilty, and like planting evidence and stuff. And it's all couched under this like 80s corrupt cops, truly a hero fighting against the system bollocks. And
To be fair though, in real life, you don't get invisible predator aliens stalking police through cities either.
No, that's true.
You know,
But I just don't. I think the problem is I don't like his character.
no, I do see what you mean. I do see what you mean. It's that it's a little bit like the way they portray. It's the same kind of level of portrayal of policing that you see in the beginning of Demolition Man,
Yeah.
isn't it? This guy jumping out of a helicopter and blowing up a building, and everyone goes, "Man, you just destroyed a whole city block." And he's like, "So what? I got the guy. I'm a hero." Yeah, okay, I can see what you mean, but also that was a trope of the time, definitely a trope of cinema at the time in terms of portrayal of police.
Yeah, no, it was. But I think that I personally don't think that elevated the 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 picture, because I think it would have been much more interesting to have. I mean, somebody like, I don't think that you have to be somebody that so radically breaks the rules
Yeah,
to be successful against a predator.
yeah.
I think you actually just need to be skilled in a different way.
Absolutely. I suppose the one final thing I would say, this again in a meta response, would be to say that this was also very much in the bloodstream of pop culture at the time, wasn't it? There's this idea
Yeah.
of the LA riots, that actually Los Angeles was on the brink of just being completely out of control. There's a reason why.
Yeah, but I genuinely, again, I mean, putting it in that level of reality, why would you want such a corrupt
but
police person
but I
to be
suppose
celebrated as solving the problem?
but I suppose my point is, it wasn't reality. This was the LA riots
No, I
happened in a
know.
very small area. It wasn't the whole of LA was a powder keg. So the Hollywood was using international awareness of this notion of a battleground to further various police and cop genre films and gangland kind of dramas. And this
Yeah,
was definitely a victim of that, and it's definitely hyper real. But I do like some of the characters. I think again they all seem capable.
yeah,
Members of the team are worthy of, for the most part, our respect. Or at the very least, they get a smile from us.
yeah,
Ruben Blades playing Danny Archuleta, the guy with the glasses who is Danny's second in command.
hmm
Um, I think he's fantastic, very very aware, very street smart, and I suppose that's it, isn't it? All of this is meant to be street smart. It's not meant to be about a
Yeah.
rebel cop. It's meant to be a guy who knows what has to happen to get things done, and therefore he can read the room and he can read the hunt and he can chase this guy down and he's relentless and so on. So if I get, yeah, I mean, you're crinkling your face. So I know.
I'm also nodding.
No,
Two simultaneous pieces of body language.
no,
So
I
I
know,
am
I know.
crinkling my face, but I'm also agreeing.
Yeah, yeah,
Reluctantly, but agreeing.
because you're right. It's not a great portrayal of policing, but it is.
It's
It's
very much of that. Like I
it's
liken that
heightened.
movie a little bit. Yeah, I liken it to a little bit like hyperbole of life in the sense
Yeah,
like RoboCop was. Everything was like
exactly.
OTT,
Yeah,
and I think it was a little bit like that. But in a way, as I was trying to, I mean, that's what takes me away from it being. So Predator, I know, was a little bit like that,
hmm,
but it was much more subdued, and I liked it more because of that gentler, softer
yeah,
approach to that. Whereas this one, I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It's definitely not the worst of the sequels or part of the canon. I enjoy it, but that little bit would be my complaint about it, if you see what I mean.
yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Following on from that, there were questions as to whether or not Arnie would return to the series, but also growing excitement at the prospect of predators hunting aliens. And in the mid 90s, there was a whole range of computer games looking to cater for that. In 1994, for example, my favorite one of these came out. It's a Capcom arcade machine that I got to play in my youth, growing up on the North Wales coast at the arcades. It was called Alien, not Aliens, Alien versus Predator, 1994, from Capcom. And this actually is an attempt to explain where
The
Arnie,
skeleton come from?
no, where Dutch
Oh no.
went to. So he's actually, he doesn't look like Dutch. In the thumbnail for this episode, there's a guy behind the counter with like a green sort of mech suit on and very blonde hair. That's meant to be Arnie. And I know,
Well, offs.
but he joins a team of four to go and hunt xenomorphs. So actually, you have him as a cyborg. You have Lieutenant Lin Kurosawa as a cyborg, and two predators, the hunter and the warrior, on a side-scrolling adventure to basically try and purge a xenomorph outbreak on Earth. So that's an interesting little again over the top ridiculous bit of storytelling, but I like it as an alternate universe. Maybe Arnie goes off
Yeah, I
and
mean, I have to say, like, I haven't played that game, but I have played the AVP games
hmm,
and I have very much enjoyed them.
hmm,
I have to say, again, it took me a while to warm up to the Predator
yeah,
version of the game because it's a so like the Marine is you're being hunted, and
hmm,
that's my favorite version.
yeah,
I'm like, that's just scary. And the alien, I struggled with the alien because there was no sense of gravity and you can just crawl all over the walls. And so I just very quickly got disorientated about which direction was down.
yeah.
And I would quite often just let go of the button and fall and be like, oh, that's down.
And then what? Then they're beyond to you.
And then you would plummet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that didn't quite always work for me. But then once I sort of got into the idea of the predator, that you were kind of this stealthy hunter picking these people off,
Hmm.
I was like, actually, that's really fun. So I did
Hmm.
enjoy that.
Oddly enough, I didn't actually play some of those classic games on, especially on PC. I just didn't have a
Mm.
PC at the time when they were coming out, and now they just don't run on modern PCs. Unfortunately, I have tried, but
Can you not get a ROM?
again, I've tried, but I mean,
Mm.
maybe we can find one, but a bit difficult. But come 2004, so like a decade after the release of that Alien versus Predator Capcom game, we would get technically the next film with the Predator in it, I will say. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I don't think we can jump all the way to 2010 and Predators without at least acknowledging the
No, I
existence of
think we
these
do.
films.
Yeah. No, I think we have to acknowledge them.
What do you think of Alien versus Predator? As I say, it's loosely based on the premise of the novel Prey.
So I quite enjoy AVP, the first one. Let's just clarify.
Hmm.
I find the second one almost challenging to finish. In fact, I haven't watched it in ages because I started watching it and just didn't get past half an hour because I was just bored out of my brain. But yeah, so I mean, I kind of feel about it like I quite enjoy it. It's a little bit silly. I don't really like how they did the aliens.
No.
Um, I think the aliens, like the bit where they jump and attach themselves to people's faces and stuff. This is why I don't like it for canon for the aliens, because I feel like they represent that not so well. But I think in general, it's fun. I like the woman in it. I think she's a really nice character.
Yeah.
And it shows that, you know, you can gain respect by being sensible and following rules.
Yeah, yeah. Following a code, yeah.
Yeah.
She ends up working together with the predator, and again, it's also a little bit like that predator, alien versus predator computer game. It's the idea of humans and predators teaming up to take care of this more dangerous, insidious species, the xenomorph. So, yeah, okay, and that's
I mean,
I suppose one thing I would say, archaeologically speaking, is that it really leans heavily into the ancient aliens tropes. You know, this idea of
oh yeah,
pyramids in Antarctica.
and the Anunnaki and stuff.
Yeah, I like the opening of the film. There you go. I can say that definitely. I
Yeah.
like the old
Well,
whaling
oh,
station.
excuse me. I kind of think like the setting and that pyramid and everything isn't really what's important. That's just setting.
Yeah,
And actually, it was kind of a silly choice
yeah,
in a way because um, it's in some ways distracted from what was the importance of the story.
well, and that is humans and predators learning to hunt together.
No, it was the thing was the predator going in to hunt the alien,
Yeah,
and they have a kind of
the sort of farming of the xenomorph as a
yeah,
prey species. Yeah.
yeah, and they needed to contrive, the storytellers needed to contrive some sort of mechanism via which they could get the humans to stumble upon this. I mean, it was a that is it is contrived because it's all like timing, isn't it? It's like they just happen to stumble across it just as this is the right time to stumble. You know, it's all a bit like
Yeah,
whatever.
and there's a queen. There's a
But
queen in the basement that's laying all these eggs, and yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's a bit. Well, actually, you know
I,
what? Do you know what it is? What it actually portrays is it's the beginning of the predators seeming a bit negligent, actually, because in both Alien versus Predator and Alien versus Predator
okay,
Two, they both in both films they appear to be not know how to look after this prey species that they apparently are so enamored with hunting, but also apparently can't. They can't put it in a spaceship without crashing and letting one loose. They can't set up a farm on Earth without it risking, destroying the whole planet. And that's in the one of the flashbacks, isn't it, where they talk about how if the xenomorphs overtook, they would just sort of wipe out. They would use their gauntlets and destroy the whole place. It,
yeah,
it
but I also
starts
don't
to.
like that either. It's like they're fucking Ripley died to stop them getting to Earth, and the predators are just sticking them on Earth. It's fuck.
Actually that is a damn good point. Actually, yeah, yeah, and also
Don't like
long,
it.
long, long before Ripley
Yeah,
even, yeah, that's a bloody good point. Yeah, absolutely. So actually, it portrays predators as not only negligent but clumsy. Kind of like whereas they
well,
given how
maybe it
careful they
doesn't.
are.
Maybe it's the fact that the alien is really incontainable, and maybe that's the joy of the different prey. Because I mean, the alien is a different hunting object compared to humans, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also, why would they do it on Earth? That's the other thing. Like, you've got a whole universe you can go and explore.
Well, because and actually we touched on this in when we talked about aliens. I think
Oh, is
I
it to
think
do with they become clever if they're humans?
exactly. I think it's because humans are a really good gestation
Mm.
prospect for facehuggers, and are outcomes.
Don't like it, but
No,
okay.
Again, I'm having to do that work for them.
Yeah.
I'm having to make it make sense. And then Alien versus Predator Requiem, I was kind of excited for when they were talking about it because they said, okay, yes, we didn't quite get the first one right there, but let's do it again. Let's do it better. I think the film is borderline unwatchable. In places, it's almost pitch black because they clearly didn't have
Oh
the budget for
yeah.
special effects or for the suits to look good, so they just thought they'd hide it with bad lighting. The fact that at the end of that one, they actually have alien technology, so predator technology in the hands of humans,
Uh,
is again long before Ripley, long before the corporations, is a bit silly. And actually, that is it that one? It's either this film or the Predator or something. There's some basically they're desperate to try and bring in elements that just shouldn't exist yet
mm.
in this timeline. If they're trying to insert these films into the timeline that would become Ridley Scott's Alien, and so therefore, yeah, I don't think they should exist. I don't. I mean, do you think? Okay, do you think AVP or Alien versus Predator Requiem adds anything to the Predator canon? I mean, I guess we see a brief bit of the Predator homeworld in the second one, don't we? When it gets a report of, oh no, there's a ship crashed on Earth, I better go and sort this out.
So I genuinely don't have them. I don't have a problem with that being canon for Predator, because it doesn't really mess up the timeline for Predator, and I think that the alien species are a species that they would be interested in hunting. So I feel like I don't feel that's a lack of, I think I don't agree with the second one at all. I mean, I can barely even watch it. But the first one, I think the fact that they kept the scope small in
Yeah.
terms of the peril. I mean, I know there's this, like this thing of like if they escape, it's the end of the world or whatever. But it was a small scale terror of a bunch of people in peril, and that to me is what it's like. What is it like to be hunted? And they're not directly hunting you, but you're in the mix of this absolutely horrendous situation.
Yeah.
And that to me, I thought yes, and I felt like it added to the like myth of them hunting aliens. I didn't have a problem with that. The second one, I'm just like, oh, go away.
Do you know what the second one is? Aliens and predators come to Dawson's Creek. It's that kind of with the teen drama going on,
Oh
and
yeah.
then
It's just, but like, but the idea of, because this is the other thing, like, I really liked the idea of an alien spawning from a predator.
yeah,
But again, I didn't like the idea that it changed the mouth of the alien. It would have been far more interesting if they'd have kept that physical change much more subtle
well,
and actually had it be more. I don't even know. I just think
but
it
I
was
mean,
just,
it's
it should
interesting.
have been just legend that you never actually see. It should have been off-screen story.
Well, actually, I mean, it's interesting because I mean, yeah, again, in the aliens episode, I talked about some of the toys that were released. There's the mantis alien. There's a variant of the queen alien. There's a snake
Yeah.
alien, and the one constant through all of them is actually the head shape and the mouth. They all stay
Yeah.
the same. The
But
bodies
even when
change, but the
but
but the heads
even
don't.
in Alien canon, it doesn't change it. So you're
Yeah.
meant to believe, aren't we, that the
Oh, the cow or
um
the dog. Yeah.
yeah, the dog, but and then you get a different kind of alien come out of it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the shape of the alien, it changes the behavior of the
No,
alien.
no, it does change the shape. So with the dog ones and or the cow, whichever version of Alien 3 you watch, this one runs on all fours, but its
They
head
all did
is a
that
xenomorph. Well,
in Aliens.
they they all can do that, but they also tended to be on. Oh, see, no, they didn't. No, they didn't.
No. I don't agree.
No, but
I
actually, no,
The
but
first
no,
one, it was on all
but
four. No, 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 no.
no,
The
but
first, okay, fine.
no, no,
I concede. Go.
no, but we know that Alien 3, they deliberately designed it to reflect having come from a four-legged animal. So its limbs are different. Its forward limbs are different compared to the xenomorphs that are birthed from humans. They are. They just are. If you look at them, they are.
Okay. Well, okay, fine. But even then, why would, if it was a predator alien morph, why would it be the like pincer stick
Well, yeah,
insect
the
mouth
mandibles.
thing?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. There's no reason for the mandibles. Absolutely, I agree. But anyway, so AVP, we can put it on a shelf. It happened. We're acknowledging that it happened. But it would be another 3 years. So it was 2004 AVP, 2007 AVP two, 2010, the film Predators. Obviously, playing on Aliens as the sequel to Alien,
Yeah.
Predators, the sequel or a sequel to Predator and Predator 2. And this was actually based on a script that initially was written by Robert Rodriguez, El Mariachi fame, in 1996. So he'd been shopping this around Hollywood for a while. It was on the shelf when obviously AVP and AVP2 were being made, and it was fairly heavily rewritten by the time the final film came around, directed by Nimrod Antal. But this was a clever twist. It was a bit of a back to basics, hunting film again. Obviously, Adrian Brody is the lead, playing a character called Royce. Alice Braga as Isabel, I think, is a real highlight in that film. I think she's fantastic.
Yeah, agree.
And this idea of just leaving Earth now again, not going to the predator planet, but going to a hunting preserve, a random other planet where they just lift people. Not only was a good and fairly fresh way of approaching the story, bringing back the original score, the music cues from the first film was really cool, but also I loved the play on the title.
Yeah.
Yes, predators. Sure, there are two different types of predator in this film, likened to wolves and dogs by Lawrence Fishburne's character. Ronald Noland he plays. No, Ronald Noland. But also the question is, why are all these humans here? Because they are predators. Everyone in this film is a predator, whether or not we know it from the get-go or not. And I really liked it.
Well, no, well, I mean, I like this. I think this is the best of the sequels.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed it. And I like the fact, because, I mean, what they've done is they've basically taken humans that are killers, haven't
Yeah.
they?
Mm-hmm.
From Earth and put them onto this planet. And then there's this kind of thing of we're going to hunt the most dangerous of people,
Yeah.
is kind of how I viewed it. They don't know why they're there, and I've completely forgotten what my
But they
point
do
was.
they do start though to figure out that first of all they're not in Kansas anymore. Royce
Yeah,
notices the sun isn't moving, magnetism is all messed up on the planet,
yeah,
and then he quite rightly asks the question, why are some of these other people here? Like, this guy doesn't fit. Like, what? And we don't really get an answer to that until more or less the end of the film, do we?
yeah.
But the fact that he's a doctor, the fact that he, it fits all the psychopathic red flags in that sense, and the fact that also that he plays on being looking like a civvy amongst soldiers for
Yeah.
protection as well.
Oh, yeah, because they sort of protect him, don't they?
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
remembered what I was going to say. I think the fact that they select these humans is interesting because it says something about their surveillance of the human species.
yeah, yeah.
And the fact is, they must be watching quite closely to figure out, for example, that character, because that character, who is clearly a serial killer, is
He's hiding his behavior from his fellow
yes, is
humans.
hiding his behavior, and obviously quite successfully, because he's obviously not been arrested. He's still portrayed as a doctor, and you still then have him in this situation. So my question then is like, how are they monitoring? Because you work out what the selection process is,
Mm,
but my question then is, what is this monitoring process?
yeah. Well, what is the monitoring process? But also, is there any element of justice here as well? And so much as
Oh,
the
do you think that's what it? I had
well,
not
I
gone
don't
down
know.
that route
I
at
don't.
all.
The thing is, I don't know because I mean, because one of the I think Nikolai, played by Oleg Taktarov, I think a Russian actor, certainly plays a Russian in Chechnya. He says, "I think we're in limbo. I think we're being punished for our behaviour in life," and it sort of goes back to the first film where it's clear the predator won't necessarily attack someone who's unarmed. So Arnie kicks the gun out of the girl's hand, doesn't he, in that film, or the lady's hand, and
Mm-hmm.
and in other films, it sort of that's played on this notion of worthy prey. Actually,
Yeah.
in the comic Batman, Batman versus Predator, actually in that comic, the Predator doesn't kill a retired blind boxer in a room full of mobsters because he's a retired blind boxer. He's not a danger.
It's so crazy to me that there's a Batman versus Predator comic.
There's Batman versus Aliens as well. It's fantastic. It's crazy. It's one of my actually it's probably my second favorite Batman story. It's
Oh
Batman
my
versus
god.
Aliens. Yeah, yeah. There's also Superman versus Aliens. That one's interesting as well. They have to sort of nerf him by putting him on a planet where he's got poisoning or something in order to give the xenomorphs any chance at doing anything to him. But anyway, the point is that that's played on and picked up in Dark Horse, in DC, and other
Mm-hmm.
comic runs that these creatures turn up in. And I sort of wonder whether or not. Oh no, actually, it might be Danny Trejo's character. Is it Chuchillo? He might be the one who says we're being punished. Actually, one
I
of
don't
them anyway.
remember.
But the question is, are these people being lifted because they're deadly? Are they being lifted because they are a risk to the rest of the stock on Earth, as it were, because they're all killing people? So, like, you've got Danny Trejo plays a cartel member who cuts people up, puts them in barrels. You know, you've got the serial killer. You've got Alice Braga is clearly an elite sniper. Possibly, she's an army member at the very least. She's in
Yeah.
the unit. Adrian Brody is a mercenary. I don't know. The thing is, I don't know. I'm not sure where the honor code stops for predators and whether or not they.
So I had always thought that they were picked because they were so like if you watch in the first one, he sort of picks them off once he sees that they are armed and are killers.
Yeah.
And then I think we get more answers to this idea in Prey,
Hmm.
where you see this kind of exploratory behavior of any animal that kills another animal is deemed worthy of trying to hunt. And
Okay.
you get to the fact, and the bigger the the higher up the food chain almost that you
Mm-hmm.
go,
Mm-hmm.
the more worthy or more interest the predator has, the more worthy the prey, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I find interesting because the person that defeats him, I know we're not talking about it yet, but maybe we should. The person that defeats him is actually not a killer.
She's not a killer. I think
And she'd been unsuccessful in her hunts.
she had been. Are we just skipping over the Predator 2018 entirely? Do you think?
Yeah. To be honest, right, I went to the cinema to watch it and I can't remember anything about it. I just remember, I remember there being an ambulance scene and a
Yeah.
lot of silly jokes and me just being like, oh yeah, fairly enjoyable. Can't remember a thing about it.
No. No. It's directed by Shane Black.
Unworthy.
Well, it's unworthy, but it's also probably the most disappointing.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not. It might be the worst. It's definitely the most disappointing. Directed by Shane Black, who was in the original Army team that went in with Arnie and Dutch, as it were. He was on the cast and in that crew. He was really bigging up the fact that he wanted to bring the Predator back following the mistakes of AVP, seemingly ignoring the relative success of Predators, I think. And for a 1 hour 47 minute film, it drags on,
Oh yeah.
but it also at the same time does some really weird stuff. So the idea that predators are looking to augment their DNA with human DNA, for example.
Yeah, why?
Yeah. Or the
Again, I'm going to go into this rant again because I know I've done it a few times, but
yeah,
genetic engineering is lazy storytelling.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just lazy.
It's very lazy. The fact that
Sorry.
it does something weird with neurodivergency, and this idea that this kid, because he's got autism, he can read alien.
Oh, because it's a savant.
Yeah, it. I don't. It.
That's a real trope actually at the
Yeah.
minute about this, like, you know, disabilities and divergences from what's considered normal actually being superpowers is kind of, I don't think that's a helpful conversation actually.
Well, it's definitely not it's definitely not helpful for all in that sense, and it's also not, especially if you're using it in the same way that you use the idea of DNA. You're just going, oh, autism. Now the kid can do anything. It's lazy. It doesn't really seem to go anywhere. And actually,
But it's also not educational about these disorders, and like actually there's some really interesting things that happen.
yeah,
You can get some interesting characters, like, and it doesn't have to be stupid.
no. And unfortunately, it was stupid. The writing was terrible, especially for a Shane Black movie. The jokes were awful. The humans using alien predator tech was awful. The super predator was awful. The like the whole thing was awful. So AVP, I acknowledge exists. The Predator, I haven't even. I definitely am not going to put it in my collection.
No.
I just don't. I don't acknowledge it. I just don't. I
Well, I
can't.
have I have the two AVP
Yeah,
DVDs, but
me
I
too.
don't have the Predator,
No,
and I have no plans to
no.
purchase it.
It was
But I
terrible.
do remember the first. Well, it was terrible, but I do remember going to the cinema and watching it and being like, meh, and not being offended by it. But like, it's not stayed with me. I've got no interest in watching it again. I don't remember it being particularly wonderful.
No.
So, and normally, if there's like a sequel that's even halfway good to kind of a franchise like this, where I've got some investment in it,
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, yeah, give me that. Even if it's not top notch,
Yeah.
I need it. I'm a completionist,
Yeah.
but not in this case.
No. One of the taglines is "You'll never see him coming," and yet, arguably, they show the predator and variants thereof in such extreme close-up detail that actually it also makes everything look too clean and crisp and I know I don't want to see the predator on a medical bed being examined with lights on him. No, just don't. It's like going under the stairs where there's a monster, hoovering the whole place, putting in halogen lamps,
And
and
examining it in great detail.
yeah, exactly, yeah, and it turns out the monster's actually just it's like a mouse. It's just a mouse that's quite aggressive. No,
But
no,
this is
it was.
something that you learn from many horror movies. Like, less is more. Don't show the monster in detail, give detail, and allow the audience members to fill in the gaps, because then they will fill it with their own terror,
Yeah,
which will be different for each person, and that makes it genuinely scary.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I suppose one, what not? It's not a one redeeming feature, not so much for this film, but for the idea of this film, is the fact that it is at the very least drawing on the hint of a broader governmental effort to understand this creature that we're
Mm-hmm.
given in Predator 2. So maybe the question is, what does Gary Busey's unit do with their knowledge? And they probably do something like this in the Predator. But
Yeah,
but it's also
it,
it's just awful.
yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate that it
Yeah,
wasn't, because again, I mean, I think a Predator sequel would have been welcome. It has been welcome in Prey, hasn't it?
yeah,
In the sense of like, there's an audience there that if you do a half decent job, will eat it up, will enjoy it, and will
yeah,
will want more. But
Yeah,
yeah, that movie didn't deliver on so many different levels, unfortunately.
yeah, it would. Yeah. Okay, so let's not talk about it ever again. So
Prey.
Prey. So 4 years after The Predator, we get 2022. Prey released our streaming services, and also I presumably, I think it's presumably because now Disney owns this franchise, and they're not necessarily interested in doing a cinema release for the Predator franchise, not least because of how the last film did and how it was received.
But I also think it's lower risk. But
Yeah.
I also think I mean I don't know how you feel about it, but like I quite often don't go to the cinema for certain movies like this anyway, because I'm just like I don't want to pay to be disappointed.
Exactly, exactly, and actually, that's why I was so pleased to see, on the Disney Plus app, it was just saying "coming soon." Pray. I was thinking,
Yeah,
brilliant. I don't have to.
but I wonder, just on a slightly aside, does that lower the expectation of quality in the fact that we're not expecting a cinema run?
I think it did lower the expectation of quality, but that meant that it had all the space to exceed expectations.
Yeah.
But also, as well, I actually genuinely think it's is it Dan Trachtenberg is the director here. I think he and the team behind this, the marketing for this film in particular, actually went and trolled the audience with the trailer. They put in stuff like, "Oh, clearly she's just going to cover herself in mud, so she's hiding from the predator." Oh, but that's not what the mud is for in the film. They put
Yeah.
in her what looks like a really badly botched hunting expedition, when actually that's not how that hunting expedition unfolds in the film.
Yeah.
They put in a tagline of like, "Why do you want to hunt? Because you don't think I can." Yeah, they put in the most antagonistic sort of like baity line in the trailer. I think to piss off those blokes who, for some stupid reason, are going, "You can't have a girl beating the predator," and saying that this is a woke feminist, agenda type movie. And I think they baited them, and I think they did a very good job of that, because actually I think the film is much more, and it does exceed expectations. And
Yeah.
can I just say one thing on this topic of as well of Native Americans? Something which every single Predator film has had is a woman of color in it.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one. The first one, yeah, she's a prisoner and she's explaining what's happening in the jungle. In the second film, you have Maria Conchita Alonso playing Leona Cantrell, who grabs Paxton by the balls and just says, "Leave me alone."
But I do think all of them have actually been very representative
Yeah,
of lots and lots of different
in
ethnicities.
AVP, you've got representation in Predators. Alice Braga playing Isabel, and even in The Predator, Olivia Munn turns up as a scientist, POC, and she's not a wet rag. So she's not useless. So in that sense, I don't understand where that pushback was coming from. I think it's become fashionable for angry young and frankly, unfortunately, not so young men to look to be offended by strong, or leading roles given to women in physically active
Action.
roles,
Yeah.
action roles. And yet, as we've discussed before, those same men will tell you how amazing Alien is, and Aliens,
Yes. And
and
Terminator.
Terminator. Yeah, exactly. And lots of the stuff has been about how, this what's it, 210-pound girl, she couldn't take on the Predator. The Predator kicked Arnie's ass, and you're like, well, she doesn't. That's the point. She becomes a hunter. like,
Yes.
and that's also the point of the Predator, for fuck's sake, is that the,
Yes.
the
Yes.
Predator doesn't take on the
Yeah.
Predator.
It's not combat.
No, it's not fair combat. It's
No.
stalking. You're
Yeah.
stalking your prey. In that sense, all hunting is whether it's with a ranged weapon or whether it's from a hide or whether it's being very patient until the prey gets in a trap. It is not fair, and so she finds a way in this film to make it to tip the odds in her favor, and that's hunting. That's predator versus prey.
Yeah.
Anyways, I know I'm getting slightly ahead of myself there, but it just occurred to me while I was
I don't know.
watching
I mean,
this.
I find it really difficult in terms of like, I don't know. I don't really want to comment on the negative feedback from men making comments about,
Some men.
no, okay,
Yeah.
but I don't, people
Yeah.
making comments about women, because I think it's like feeding the argument in a way, and I
Yeah.
feel very strongly about it, in the sense of like, I honestly think that whole, I think those people are just so ignorant and they just need to educate themselves. And
To be honest, I also think it's a dying breed of
oh,
people.
I don't. I think it's having a resurgence,
No, no,
and it
no.
makes me very worried.
No. By dying, what I mean is it's having a resurgence because people who are desperate seek to quickly propagate their ideas, don't they? People, yeah, people who are
Oh, and I
desperate.
suppose, yeah, I mean, the loudest people does not mean the majority, does it?
Exactly. No, no. So it's getting louder. It's getting. If it's acting as though it's been cornered, this notion is.
And the notion of masculinity.
Yeah, but actually, if you watch this film, and you watch it as though you're watching human beings, as a human being, for goodness sake, it's a bloody good film.
Yeah, I think it is a good film. I do think it has some feminism tropes in there. I mean, we discussed this, didn't
Yeah,
we, in terms of like the beginning of the movie, because you were saying it wasn't an egregious, you're a girl, you can't hunt.
yeah,
And I thought it was. I mean, I know she wasn't, those words were not used.
yeah,
And it's like, but that sentiment was expressed to her
yeah, yeah.
over and over and over again. And my argument has always been, I don't think it matters that you don't say you can't do it. The message is the same.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a more subtle message than it could have been, but I still think it was the message, and I think it was overplayed. I think they
It was.
overly said that at the beginning.
Yeah, they did. Well, no, I don't. I don't think they did. Sorry,
Yeah,
overdo it. But I think what they did do was they repeated. I think actually what they did was relatively subtle, and it was being done first of all because obviously this is a film for a modern audience, so it's playing with modern expectations as to
yeah,
what women's roles would be in that tribal context. But and also there is an element of repetition where we get a sense of initially we meet our hero, played by Amber Mid Thunder Naru, being woken up by her mum with like a harsh foot to the shoulder. Come on, get up! It's time to go and go and pick tubers in the forest, this kind of thing. And then while she's picking her tubers, she decides to go and actually I'm going to go and do some axe throwing practice. Now, crucially, and this is possibly where I think that I think those toxic guys will miss this, and I think possibly a modern audience misses this. She's not being stopped from doing that. No one's gone, what are you doing? Where are you going? Because she didn't sneak off. She just goes, right, I'm going to go and practice axe throwing.
no, no. I mean,
And
I
so,
got
so,
that
so,
with,
and then, sorry, and then you do get a repetition when she fails, inverted commas, to hunt the lion, of her going back to that routine, her mum going, come on, get up, time to pick tubers again, and she decides to walk off and find this thing that's in the forest that's hunting creatures and people. But what's really important is that for example her brother doesn't say you can't do this, it's never been done before, etc., etc. He actually the line is on the third time watching it, I really paid close attention to this. He says, so you think you're ready to hunt something that's hunting you? It's not a case of yes, there were definitely. It's a bit actually, frankly, it's a little bit like actual life, isn't it? Women are more or less brought up, especially in modern England, for example, modern Britain, more broadly. Often girls are brought up with certain expectations. Toys are about cooking and cleaning, babies, reproduction, marriage,
caring,
caring, exactly. So
nursing.
the context is there, and it's unspoken, and it is what an anthropologist might call the habitus. It is the unspoken rules by which we all live, and we all we all internalize them. So it is undoubtedly there. I absolutely, I'm not saying it's not there, and this is a meritocracy that they're portraying, but I think what I appreciate about the film is that they didn't put the modern thing of someone saying women are should be doing this, onto the film. It's more a case of like her mum's going, "Oh, why do you want to go hunting? Isn't it just better just to be doing this?" It's just, it is more subtle
But also, I mean,
so go on.
I don't think they did the thing of like, you're rubbish because you're a girl.
No,
I think the thing they did, this isn't for you. You've had this, the evidence we have, the kills that you've done
yeah,
when
you've
we've been
you've
out with
tried,
you
and yeah,
before. Yeah, it's not been successful. And I think that's, again, so there is it's almost, in some ways, it's not about her being a girl. And they could have, I think, kept the dialogue pretty much,
yeah.
because there must be men within that community who are also not hunters.
Oh, yeah, definitely there are.
Yes.
But absolutely, yeah.
So it felt like, it did
But
feel
worse.
like there was that if her character had been put in as a male character instead, the dialogue would not have needed to be changed.
No.
But I did still feel like there was this kind of hammering that, like, because it was the mother going, let's do these female jobs, and all the women were walking and she was going against the flow.
Going in the opposite direction, yeah.
I feel that was not subtly done. That was a big smack in the face of like, she is not doing what's expected of her. She's going against the flow.
Yeah.
And in those particular instances, it was going against femininity.
Yeah.
Whereas in other instances, you're right, it was less about the femininity bit. It wasn't being, and I think they did a good job in the sense of presenting the community not as being just this, girls do this, boys do this, because I think that would have been not doing justice to the community.
But that's true. But also, that said, though, they also don't shy away from the fact that when a group of the braves who don't include her brother, because her brother's on the other side of the valley looking for her, and she's gone out to find this predator, and she's when they come across her, they beat her up.
Yeah.
But then also she fights back as well, and so it's
There is an unspoken equality in that sense, isn't there? But there's almost this childlikeness in that bit of like,
yeah, playground, yeah.
Get yourself sorted, comply, and like,
why are you doing what I want you to do? Yeah, exactly.
And so that was it again. They weren't afraid to be violent towards her,
No.
but there was this expectation, almost in the sense that she was younger, maybe like the younger sister, the annoying sister.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of the things I thought was good in the sense is like, although she's not an experienced hunter like those other boys. Would you say they were boys, men,
young men,
teenagers? God, I sound old. Those young men.
young men.
Those young men.
Young men.
I've completely lost what I'm saying now. It's all gone. My brain.
She wasn't as old as those young men. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but strategically, she was very sophisticated.
Yeah, yeah. So, for example, they initially go out to find one of the braves who's been taken off by a lion and wasn't killed by the lion because the lion was scared off its prey by something else. And there's a point when, I mean, again, I love the representation of preparedness. They go into the forest with just what they need, and when they find this guy, they know how to make a stretcher to bring him back.
But that also really takes us back to that original bit in the Predator movie, and I liked that in the sense that you get the sense that these are people that are very comfortable in this environment. They know how to use it to their best effect. This is their world, their jungle, forest.
They're plains. They're
plains.
The Great Plains.
There was a lot of
America.
trees in the plains.
Well, yeah, but there are forested areas. There also, I think, there's a swamp area as well. But as you say, they were very comfortable. But also, I think what's interesting though is that as comfortable as they were, they still needed to be reminded by her when they sort of were going to put him down by the fire. And she's like, no, he needs to be cold. Because what do you want him to be, comfortable or dead? Because he'll bleed out if his body warms up.
Oh yeah, and so again, that's drug, which I want to know if it really exists. I suspect not. I suspect not. But okay, and also from a physicist's point of view, right?
It wouldn't cool you down that much.
Well, no, it could cool you down. That's not an issue. That isn't an issue that it would cool you down, and it could, because it could restrict blood flow, you know, sedate you. That would lower your metabolism. That's fine. That would cool you down. My question is then, the infrared viewing of the predator must be shocking with that.
Well,
Because it must have a range that's just like, I will only see optimum body temperature.
an optimum body temperature for a certain size and weight and type of mammal. Yeah.
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 And I'm not being funny, but that'd be bad. I mean, like,
Well, but
if
also,
that's
so the thing is, but also as well, we see in this in Prey that that's not the case. It can see rodents, it can see rabbits, it can see wolves. It can,
well, actually, yeah, you see that in the Predator as well, don't you? When he
Yeah.
takes his mask off, that he gets rid of the infrared bit, and you can see another spectrums. But again, I mean, I just was like, what is the benefit of this infrared if it is so highly tuned? As that, like, I'm not being funny, you put mud on you, I
and he
mean, how
disappeared.
much is that gonna it's just, I mean, it's not gonna significantly change the radiation coming off you to be observed. And the same thing with this drug, like, from a science point of view, like, yes, you can do that to your body temperature, but you go too low, you're dead.
Yeah.
So, like, you're talking within the narrowest range. So it's still going to be releasing infrared radiation.
Yeah. No, I agree. I
Anyway.
agree. It is a plot hole, but at the very least, in this film, what I thought was really cool was that this predator, in so much as these people are in 1719, I think, a couple of hundred years, better part of 300 years earlier than Arnie and his team in 1987. The Predator also is a couple of hundred years earlier in terms of its technology as well.
Yeah,
So
I
actually,
thought that was lovely.
well, again, the more I think about it, the more I look at it, the more impressed I am with how they retrograded the technology.
Yes.
So, for example, the mask is bone with technology on the inside of it. It's got like a metal rim, and clearly it can see infrared, and it's installed the laser sight, which is 3 dots instead of 3 lines in its vision, this
Yeah.
kind of thing. I love the fact that instead of a shoulder-mounted cannon, it has a gun behind that shoulder that it pulls out to shoot. So it's almost that you can see how later on, a couple of hundred years in the future, predators would move from that gun being mounted there on their back to have it mounted on their shoulder in that position. I like the fact that the darts that it shoots are physical darts. So it's almost so as opposed to plasma weapons. So it's a very well thought out sort of technological retrograding that they did.
Yeah, and I mean, that whole bit there struck me as being designed and thought about by somebody that loved Predator. You know, this sense of like, this is where you see it at the first time. What would it look like 200 years in the past?
Yeah, and also bearing in mind that it still has to be an interstellar species. It still has to be able to travel to Earth. Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, I quite liked that idea as well, because, like, thinking about the predator human relationship as a whole, you get this sense that they're growing together, that as the human weaponry becomes more sophisticated, so does the predator in response, and it's this kind of knitting together of almost symbiotic, I mean, it's not symbiosis, but, you know, knitting together of these two things that are happening simultaneously.
Well, and actually, I think Predators, the 2010 movie, does touch on this idea of sped up evolution, doesn't it? I think Lawrence Fox's character talks about how they are trying to improve themselves by hunting and hunting until one of them dies, and then they go away and figure out what went wrong and then get better and then come back. I think that's
But
much more
also,
compelling than the idea of trying to harvest DNA.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, it definitely is. I mean, one of the things I really liked about the Predator's selection of people within, I know we're going back a little bit, but with the Predator's selection of people within Predators was the fact that they were not judgmental about what was a good killing method.
No.
They really did want to explore a variety of techniques. And some of them, I mean, specifically that serial killer guy, I mean, he's successful probably in a fairly narrow field,
Yes.
not necessarily in a hunting environment, but they didn't see that. They just saw, didn't they, a successful person
A
that
high kill
kills.
count. Yeah.
Yeah, and that to me is interesting as well in terms of what the value is. They don't seem to care how that's done
No.
because it's all strategic.
Yeah, but then also they have that beautiful, again, just going quickly back to that film, the beautiful moonlit sort of meadow fight between the Yakuza and the Predator. That's quite beautiful, actually.
Yeah.
Wonderfully shot. But yes, as you say, yeah. So they clearly had. Yeah, I like this idea of sort of parallel. Almost like unbeknownst to the prey, an arms race they don't even know that they're
Yeah.
involved in. But also as well,
But I think that makes them more formidable prey as it ticks
yeah,
over, which would make them more interested, and it would and the fact that that's probably why they keep coming back, because
well,
there's more to learn.
yeah, and I think I was just about to sort of praise the film for the fact that this is meant to be in the film canon the first time that predators have come to this planet. So it's almost like this guy is on an expedition.
But you can see that in
Yeah.
how they approach the killing, in the sense of like they start small. They see the first animal, don't they, to kill another animal, which is, I don't know if it's the snake is the first one that he sees, but he kills and skins the snake, and he then gets progressively bigger.
Well, then it's hinted that he's observed the lion killing the or certainly taking a human and hunting the human.
Yeah.
It would have been interesting. I saw in a review, I think earlier yesterday. Someone suggested it could have been an interesting plot twist if actually neither the brother nor the sister were able to kill the lion, but rather the predator jumped in after she bashed her head, and
Yes,
it took
and
out
they
the
didn't know
lion.
where the lion went.
Yeah, or that the brother sort of took on that the what's the word, the credit for that kill. That could have been an interesting little plot twist. But then again, I think it would have tarnished the brother. I like the brother's character. I think he was a good, in that sense, he was
Yeah,
a good man, as it were.
yeah, I mean, because I think
Tade
his
was his
arc
name.
is
Tade.
interesting in the sense of like how he relates to his sister, because he's never actively discouraging of her, is he?
No.
And he sort of has this kind of patience that one might show to a younger sibling about them whimsically thinking that they're going to be good at something that he's very expert in.
Yeah.
And he then does lie to her to try and discourage her, but it's because she's injured and he wants her to stop her
Stop
being
hurting
in
herself.
danger. Yeah, he wants her to be safe.
And he
And
said, well,
so
he
that's,
said, was it you tried, you just couldn't bring it home. It was just a
yeah.
case of like you were so close, but yeah.
And then it's not until the end where she needs like a boost of confidence that he then tells her the truth, that her strategy that she did for the kill that she failed was the reason why he was successful.
Yeah.
And that then sort of gives her the boost, doesn't it, to take on the predator using strategy, which is very different from what the boys do.
Yeah, well,
If you notice, they're very
yeah.
gung-ho about it, aren't they?
Yeah, we're going to do
There's
this. We're
no,
going to, yeah, and even also in Predators as well, they do the same. They set up a strategy which is about crossing fields of fire, traps, and dead weights, and strings and things. Yeah, yeah. Whereas in this one, Naru depends on strategy, but also on observation as well. So
Mm.
she notices that this technology works by the dot. The arrow finds the dot wherever the dot is aiming, which is also again, it's an implied retrograde weakness of this weapon system, that the predator can't shoot something right in front of it if it hasn't got its bloody mask on. The arrow will find the dot; it won't hit the thing in front of it. So she observes that and she uses that to her advantage. And also the fact that 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 you have the scene with the trappers as well, where
Mm.
it clearly, I think that again, it's
Well,
implying culture where it ups its game depending on the prey that it's fighting.
and speaking of that, I hadn't. I mean, when you said earlier about the predator being drawn to places where violence is occurring, that honestly had not occurred to me. But as soon as you said that, I was like, yes, because you got the conflict in the first one, this war conflict in this one, and in this case, you've got this conflict between colonizers, haven't you, and the native people.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The people being represented there, they're meant to be sort of French fur trappers. They're often more associated with French Canada, French Canada, as some people might say. And this makes actually the story a Northern Plains story, even though the Comanche, I believe, are Southern Plains people. So it slightly muddies the waters there. But interestingly, Amber Midthunder's background is actually in Northern Plains Sioux and I think Dakota and some other tribes, which would straddle that border into Canada. So,
Okay.
but anyway, the point is, there's a comedy series called Kids in the Hall, which Mrs. Soup, my lovely wife, adores, where they, as Canadians, they take the mick of French trappers by going out hunting businessmen in canoes. They're sort of going down the street and they sell like Gucci suits that they've taken off
But
their prey.
there is competition there, isn't there, in
Yeah,
terms of the resources? They're both there killing the animals.
yeah, yeah, and also
Um,
we see a very crass resource utilization. You know, all the buffalo have been just skinned, not even harvested for their
oh yeah,
meat.
that was horrible.
Yeah.
And actually, that was quite interesting, I thought, because I don't know much about the history of the Comanche and their hunting practices and stuff, and that was quite a shocking scene. And I wondered if that was actually the predator.
Initially, so did I. Yeah, yeah. Because also
Yeah.
it wasn't clear that she'd picked up a cigar. I thought it was like some sort of
No,
spent ammo or something.
no, I
Um,
hadn't. I couldn't see what she'd picked up, and it was only later when you saw the guy um, with the smoking the cigar that we were like, right, okay. But yeah, it was an absolutely it oddly reminded me of Tremors,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
where all the sheep disappear
Yeah.
uh,
And you're like, what?
randomly.
What? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, I did think that that was quite a shocking scene, and didn't recognize it as a yeah. It was like, what is this?
But
And
also,
I wonder if that was deliberately done, actually.
yeah. Well, I think it was deliberately done, very deliberately. But also, actually, again, in terms of baiting some of these more ugly types on the internet, the trailer. Some people I saw. I didn't watch the video. I saw a headline for a video which just made my eyes roll, which said "agenda confirmed," you know, colonizers or whatever. And it had from the trailer where the predator sort of axes one of these French guys with in the shoulder. Um, but it didn't portray this as oh, you know, evil white people, you know, and they're doing horrible things to basically this is a time before America really has got going in that part of the continent. This is a time when you've got these, yes, rapacious, exploratory, you know, vicious people going, but also actually entrepreneurial people. They weren't all just horrible monsters going out and looking for furs and stuff to trade. Actually, they did
Mm,
lots of trade with Native Americans on the West Coast, very
that's
successfully for a
interesting.
long time. Actually, so it wasn't all a conflict, but the film didn't portray it like that. It portrayed it as a skirmish. This was an event occurring where these different people and cultures and an alien are meeting
Yeah,
in a
it
particular
definitely
part
felt
of
like a clash, didn't it, on
yeah.
of things. What do you think about the fact that the predator saves her midway through from the bear?
I don't think it does. I don't think it does save her. I think
Do you not? I
no.
read that as I read that very much that the predator got the bear out of the way and stopped her from being attacked.
But no, I think so. Well, sorry, I don't think that's the case because I think what it's doing is what it did with the rabbit. So the wolf is going for the rabbit. It
Yeah,
goes, okay, that's the predator here. I'm going to kill it. So it kills the wolf. The
yeah.
bear's going for the person. It
No, the
doesn't.
bear's going for the puppy.
Well, the puppy, but then it goes for her in the beaver dam in the river,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
and then it goes right. That's the predator. I'm going to kill it.
No, that's right.
It's aware of her, but I don't think it's
Yeah.
rescuing her. I think it's
No, no, no,
identified
no,
her.
no. I don't. I no, no. I absolutely don't think it's deliberately rescuing her.
No.
But I think, as a consequence of its choice, it saves her.
Yeah, and then also we see it observing her floating off down the river. You know, so again,
But
yeah.
But do you not think that that's an interesting thing, in that by its behavior, she's then able to learn from it,
Something of it,
and,
yeah.
and and then that isn't the technique that they use later of just going up the prey ladder,
No, no. I
is
agree.
it?
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Because that's a flawed system.
Yeah.
Because it failed. He failed to recognize her true threat,
Well, and also actually, yeah. So it's when she traps the trapper, and wounds him and draws the predator. Therefore,
which was
actually,
so reminiscent of Predators, wasn't it?
it was, yeah. What was really cool actually was that she, in that sense, that's the point when it failed to identify what the predator was in that situation. So it came into the forest, or no, so into the clearing, didn't see actually that this is a prey creature and actually killed it instead of her as the predator in that interaction.
Mm.
Just one more thought on that is that I found it interesting. I quite like the way that also what we have is is the fact that she doesn't fully recognize things like what the trap is that captures the dog at the beginning, her dog at the beginning of the film. She's like, what is this metal thing? What's going on here? And she sort of tries to hit it with a rock. And it's not done as though she's stupid. It's done as though she's curious.
And
But then,
investigating.
and investigating. And that curiosity is what sets her up for the whole thing that she goes on. All the way through, she's observing, she's not put off by new technology or
No, and she's
experiences.
slow to act, isn't she? She's very thoughtful
Yeah.
in, and hence the use of the word strategic, in
Yeah.
even to the point of, like, there's this interesting scene right at the beginning which sets up the difference between her and her brother, where she's holding her bow and arrow primed to fire, and her brother's standing next to her, sort of, I don't know, being her mentor, sort of.
Yeah.
And she's waiting and waiting, and he gets impatient, and so he shoots it down, and he's like, you've got to go for it. And she's sort of saying, well, now you have to cross the river.
Yeah.
I was going to wait till it was on this side of the river so we could just walk and collect it. And I think that's a beautiful scene.
Yeah.
Because it perfectly, I think, sets up the dynamic of sort of teacher pupil, with almost the pupil exceeding the master.
Yeah, yeah, or at the very least, the pupil having a different approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also what's interesting as well is that that isn't happening in secret. They haven't gone off to some secret place to hunt. The bird lands next to some other tribe members on the other side of the river, and they go, "What the?" when it goes,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So again, that just underscores that she's not forbidden from doing this. She's just pushing against the strength of the wave that would otherwise carry her along.
I mean, it's. I think it's possibly similar to women nowadays maybe going into something like engineering, where you're not forbidden. Yeah. That's supposedly accessible to you.
Yeah.
But it isn't actually a barrier-free path.
No, it's not barrier-free, but actually, it's interesting. I would say that one of my cousins, she's not blood cousin, but we basically, it's a family cousin, as it were. She was a trailblazer for engineering in cruise ships, and also she started out actually in Liverpool doing stuff on the ferry across the river, River Mersey, and what she represents, very similar to Naru here, is someone who's not forbidden, but who has to constantly remind the people around her, at least for early on in her career, that she's here because she's capable. Um,
Yes.
but eventually, I mean, not well. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how long it took, but last time I saw her, she's just accepted as being one of the best at what she does. So
Hmm.
so yeah, as you say, you're not forbidden, but but also not every day,
Yeah.
I guess. But also, just on that note as well, what I would say is, again, anthropologically speaking, what we often observe in hunter gatherers today, and also what we know ethnographically of behavior in the past, is that also archaeologically of behavior in the past, is that actually often it's the people who push against some of these rules in the so-called habitus who actually thrive the most. So, for example, one of the one of the cases that always makes me giggle is that it's been observed in certain groups in Africa who live on the plains and live off the land and maybe herd over great distances, but also do lots of gathering. Um, that they actually, it's the guys who, I mean, first of all, it's the people who aren't scared of new things that do well. So the people who
Hmm.
interact with, who have quite happy to have a mobile phone, for example, who do well. But also as well, it's the people who it's the men who do the gathering with the women who have a lot of sex.
Oh, yeah. So it's a lot of strategy, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's not just because they're with them; it's because they get to know them. They actually have conversations. They interact, and they become much more charming. And in that sense, they are far more Darwinianly, if that's a word, successful than maybe some of the blokes who go out and go, oh, I didn't quite hunt I didn't get the bear today or the bison, but next time, man, whoo.
Yeah.
So it's actually interesting to see the realities of this, and the very idea that some people are pushing back against the fact that humans are humans as opposed to people fitting into very narrow conceptions, modern conceptions of how people behaved in the past, is unfortunate. So anyway, just before we talk about where we would put these films, because I think we have to think about drawing this episode to a close
Yes.
in terms of ranking them.
Hmm.
I just wanted to talk about Raphael Adolini's pistol. So
Oh, yes.
in
Yes.
this film, it's the same pistol that is given to Danny Glover's character in Predator 2. That's actually gifted to Naru by a man who she reluctantly helps from the trapper community. He is a French speaker, but also seemingly has learnt Comanche, and is again part of this group, which is very realistic. There are travellers who learn lots of languages, and I only confirmed today. I didn't realise that actually he is meant to be Raphael himself. This is his gun.
Oh, okay.
And the reason why that's interesting is that in the originally in the comics, what they did was they expanded on the gun in Predator 2 by telling a story. It was a short story, which I actually have. It was published in I think, a Dark Horse yearly roundup of small short stories that hadn't made it into main publications. In this thing, there was like a 3 or 4, maybe 5-page story that tells the story of a pirate called Raphael Adolini who is betrayed by his crew. He doesn't like the fact that they've just raided a church. He wants them to return the gold to the church at least. And
Oh, how moral.
exactly, the crew turn on him. The predator actually jumps into this fight and fights them all off. They're about to have a fight when one of the crew members, who isn't quite dead, from memory, shoots Adolini in the back. The predator avenges Adolini's death, but then as he's dying, Adolini gifts the predator his gun, says, "Take it," and the whole story ends with the predator actually burying Adolini under a pile of rocks and gifting Adolini's grave a fold-up high-tech predator sword, and he says, "Take it," and sort of drops the sword on the grave. So that's a little
Hmm.
sort of, it's like a canon story that until now was canon at least, and that actually was one of the really things that people were so excited about from Predator 2 was this idea of going not only a world where predators hunt xenomorphs, as with the trophies on the ship, but also a world where predators have been coming to Earth for a long time. So in that sense, Prey delivers on that, but it delivers on it in a way which is changing the canon, I suppose. So in this instance, Raphael Adolini is an explorer. He might have been a pirate in a former life. Who knows? And I suppose the question is, how on earth is that gun going to make its way into the hands of a predator?
Yeah.
Because actually, at the end of the credits, they sort of tell the story of the whole film in picture form, almost like drawings on leather. In the credits, and
Well, I
then
wondered what.
they take it a step further in that, and they actually do show predator ships coming back.
Well, but we know the predators come back. But I mean, the interesting thing here, which may kind of do it, is she takes the predator's head as a trophy, which is normally what they do.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if when they return, what she's done with the skull is kind of where I'm at. And potentially there's something to do with this predator skull being a trophy and the gun all being linked.
Yeah.
And I mean, I suspect...
Well, actually, it could come into this notion of the question is, at what point do the predators become sensitive to being discovered?
Yeah.
Because at this point, presumably with
and yeah, we also don't know if this one's been like, we don't know if there's like a group of them like there were in the second movie, do we? We don't know if this guy's on its own or what.
Yeah, there could have been a ship in orbit with the rest of the clan, and this guy's been killed. But also as well, at this point, this is a relatively isolated. No, that's not the right way of putting it, because these people aren't isolated. They're very well connected, but there's not a massive government with an army that's going to use information of an alien with high-tech technology and start hunting them. So I wonder if there's an element of actually having to come back and get this skull because it's evidence of predators having been on Earth. I don't know. I guess we'll see if anything, what else comes of it. There's also one final thing as well. There's a slight hint. I think we'll have to, if this does get a Blu-ray release, we'll have to watch the extras to confirm it. A slight hint that the bone mask might be a xenomorph's front of face that's been modified. It's been suggested. It doesn't look to me like a xenomorph, but
no.
No.
I'm not enamored with that idea.
No, but it's just
whatever.
Some interesting stuff. So, how would you rank these films?
Okay, so I'm going to go in descending order because I don't think the top is going to be particularly
controversial.
So numero uno.
Yep.
Let's go with Predator.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
The original. Number 2, I would put Predators.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Number 3, I would put Prey.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Number 4, I would put AVP.
AVP above Predator 2?
Oh, no, sorry. I've completely forgotten about Predator 2. Let me try again. Maybe I should write this down.
I was just thinking,
yeah,
what?
No, top three correct.
Okay, yeah.
Number 4, Predator 2.
Yeah, okay, I agree with you there, yeah.
Okay, and then AVP, AVP2, and the Predator.
Yeah, the Predator comes dead bottom, yeah. I think I agree with you. I think that's more or less the order I put them in as well.
Although, why did you go Prey 3 being controversial?
No, because I was going, in some ways I was wondering where you're going to put the Predator 2, as it were.
Oh, and then obviously I completely forgot about
that. And then you went AVP. I was like, what? Oh my God.
That was just a mistake. Completely just a mistake.
Danny Glover's like, I'm too old for this shit. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that's definitely my ranking as well, more or less. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. After the Predator, I was like, God, what are they going to do?
Well, probably the answer was nothing.
Well, yeah,
and it became less high stakes.
Yeah, and then Disney Plus bought them and thought, okay, let's put something on streaming.
And with Disney, if it's going to be anything like Star Wars, there'll be hundreds of different things.
Do you know what? To their credit, this is a 16 rating. It's not a 15. So it's
We
actually
don't have a 16 rating in the UK.
no, but it's 16. It's rated internationally on streaming as 16 as opposed to 15. So my point being, it's slightly higher than what is a completely nerfed, action movie.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely higher than a 12A certificate, for example.
Yeah. And a PG.
One final thought, then. I don't know if I want to see a direct sequel to this. Maybe it's a good idea just to tell another story at another time, another place. Maybe it's a good idea to revisit this question of the skull. I don't know, but for me, and I think I agree with a few people I've seen sort of discussing this in other fora. Is it would be amazing to have a film a little bit like Prey we didn't know was coming. Have a film that's just advertised completely as though it is the equivalent of an Arnie action movie or something.
Oh yeah, I would love to be surprised.
Just don't know.
Yeah, that would be so wonderful if you think you're getting something and then it turns out to be a Predator movie. But I mean, I wonder whether that feeling would be the same for everybody that watched it, because I can imagine a lot of people going, I want to watch this like action movie and I got a Predator film, don't like it. So I can imagine that being quite divisive.
Yeah. And also,
I guess as I would love that.
Yeah. There's this element, isn't there, of marketers not probably being a bit too scared to do that, but that would
it can backfire.
I mean, just imagine if it was a rom-com. Like an Adam Sandler, like weird rom-com, and then you just hear.
Oh my god, a murder mystery! Can you imagine? Like 1920s Poirot.
Oh god, yes. Oh, an Agatha Christie type film. Yes, Agatha Christie, and suddenly you just hear this. Like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or this.
That would be amazing. Or it could take place on like one of those cruise ships.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you can think. Actually, yes. There you go. Just buy Kenneth Branagh. It doesn't matter how much it costs. Just make him make the next Poirot film, a secret Predator movie.
Oh yes, that'd be amazing.
And
he can put Johnny Depp in it as well.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Oh, that was good. Well, thank you for listening, folks at home. Hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation on the Predator series and, of course, Prey. And it was indeed the movie I think I've been praying for, certainly since The Predator was released. Next month, or next episode, we are going to be talking about Stephen King. We're going to do it. I still have a couple of films to knock off the list. But actually, I will say, folks, my thinking has evolved. Following,
so I think we're both a bit disappointed that we couldn't do our scheduled Stephen King, what we were going to do, and we thought Prey's just been released, so it was a great thing. But I think both of us. I mean, I am a Stephen King fan, like would even go to say maybe even a stan. But his body of work is just ginormous, and I think you could have a whole podcast series just dedicated to him. And so I think I'd completely underestimated how big a topic this was going to be. So I think we've narrowed, we've shortlisted, and we've kind of got to a place where we're going to be able to have a meaningful discussion that's not going to be very, very shallow.
Yeah, so it's I think it's going to be a conversation from you as a Stephen King reader and fan, me as a Stephen King film watcher, and sometimes slightly turned off by the films because some of them aren't great. And in that sense, I think it's going to be maybe the first conversation that we have on this topic, and we can return to it, because I know you were aware of not wanting to sound like I am an aficionado and then not be able to do everything.
No, and I think that was something that as I looked into it more and more, I was like, oh my God, I've consumed huge amounts of Stephen King product, but not probably only like a third of it,
Yeah.
Which is still a lot.
Yeah.
Like, because he's just so prolific.
It's a lot, but you are inevitably aware, as any wise person is, of just what they don't know.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
The more they know, the more you know, The more you should know, you don't know. With that little pearl of wisdom, folks, thank you once again for listening. And I'll hand over to Ruth to sign us off.
Okay, so we're on Instagram at Else Realm Diner and on YouTube. Please like, comment, and interact with us. We'd love to hear from you. So, the multiverse calls the diner back into its swirling depths. The warm conversation and cosmic mystery must depart for now. We will materialize again somewhere new in time and space. But for now, it's goodbye from the Else Realm Diner.
Else Realm Diner.
More than anything else in her life, she wants to see Paris.